There's something in you that's dying in silence. Not because it deserved to die, but because you believed it did. And now, you carry the weight of that every single day, like a cross on your back, like a secret you keep burying, but it keeps screaming inside. Maybe you were taught that anger is ugly, that desire is dirty, that wanting too much is selfish, that standing your ground means you don't love enough. So you started crucifying those parts, one feeling at a time, one urge at a time, one scream at a time. But what if what you nailed to that cross wasn't evil? What if the thing that's bleeding up there under everything you tried to hide is the most alive part of you, the most human, the most intense, the most real, the part that never had the chance to be loved by you? Maybe the reason you're so tired is because you've been holding that devil up there, punishing the part of you that only ever wanted to exist. But what if that isn't the real evil? What if the real evil is the distance between what you feel and what you let yourself feel? Maybe today is the day to look at the cross and ask with courage and tenderness, what part of me did I kill just to be loved? Hi, I'm Noah. This video isn't some big Hollywood production. It's just a way I found to share with you what I learned about myself today through what I've been learning from Carl Jung. Because maybe the moment I'm living through feels a lot like something you're living too. So if something I say here helps you feel a little less alone, just give it a like and subscribe to the channel. That way, YouTube understands that this kind of content matters to you, and it'll start showing you more of it. There are days when your body seems fine, but your soul can't stand up. You look in the mirror, get dressed, pretend everything's normal. But something inside you is screaming. It's not quite sadness. It's not exactly fear. It's more like a nameless discomfort that weighs on your chest like it has a name. And the hardest part is, you've gotten used to it. You carry it around like an invisible cross on your back. No one sees it, but you feel it. There's a part of you that feels left behind. Like somewhere along the way, you split yourself in two. The part that's allowed to be seen, and the part that had to be hidden. And every day, without realizing it, you relive that split. You show up looking whole, but feel broken inside. Something in you is locked away. Something in you has been silent for so long, you forgot what your truth even sounds like. And even when you keep going, something still feels missing. Like a part of your being is being punished in secret. Maybe a desire, a rage, a hunger you were taught was wrong. Now it lives in hiding, but it's still alive, like it's waiting in some dark corner of your mind, hoping to be heard, but you keep pretending it's not there. That's where the Calvary begins, not with blood or screams, but with silence. A silence that screams in the middle of the night, an emptiness that nothing seems to fill, and a feeling of being far away from yourself. You watch your own life like a movie where you don't belong. Your body is present, but your spirit feels tied up in some shadowed corner of your psyche. And no one understands, not even you. Carl Jung said the shadow is everything we don't want to be, but it's still there, moving through the deep waters of your soul. And when we ignore it, it doesn't disappear. It turns into symptoms, into anxiety, into self-sabotage, into confusion, into a kind of suffering that has no clear name. The truth is, your soul knows when a part of you is being left to die. Maybe that's the first step, realizing the cross is already there, even if you haven't named it yet. The discomfort is the signal. The repeated pain is the echo. And that inner silence is the cry of what's been repressed. Some Calvaries begin quietly inside us, and maybe you're in one right now, not because you deserve to suffer, but because it's time to remember the part of you that got left behind. Since you were little, you've heard stories about evil. Some came from religion, others from scared adults who said, "That's ugly. You shouldn't do that. That's the devil's work." Slowly, without even noticing, you started putting that name, devil on everything you felt but didn't know where to place. The anger that explodes out of nowhere. The quiet envy that eats you up inside. The desire that doesn't fit inside the moral rules you were taught. All of it was pushed into a dark place inside your mind. And you started to believe something was wrong with you. That maybe there really is evil inside you. But the devil living in your mind wasn't born with horns. He was born from the parts of you that got rejected too early. The traits you learned to hide just to be accepted, to be loved, to not be punished. And the more you try to push them away, the stronger they grow. Because what gets cast out of the soul doesn't just vanish, it becomes a shadow, an unconscious behavior, a projection you don't even notice. And then one day, you find yourself hating in them what you refuse to face in you. That's how the devil in your psyche gets a face, the face of the parts you no longer wanted to see. Sometimes he shows up in your dreams as a strange, repeating symbol you keep trying to forget. Other times, he appears in the way you judge people, in how you overreact, in the guilt that won't leave you alone. But underneath that inner enemy, there's a question you may have never asked. Is this devil really your enemy? Or just the name someone gave to your pain that was never heard? Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Maybe that's it. Maybe the evil you're fighting out there is really just a mirror of the inner darkness that never got the chance to exist with dignity. Maybe the devil on the cross is actually a piece of your story that got crucified too early, before you even knew what it was trying to say. You don't need to justify what you feel, but you do need to listen. What you called sin might just be a cry for truth. What you called weakness might be a lost part of yourself asking to come home. And what you called the devil might be nothing more than a distorted mirror of your own soul. A mirror made of shame, fear, and silence, but still yours. It's not easy to look at him, but it's also not fair to keep punishing a part of yourself that only ever wanted to exist. The devil that scares you may just want to be seen. Maybe he doesn't want power, or control, or chaos. Maybe he just wants to stop being blamed for everything. Because inside you, no one was born a villain. The evil you feel might not be the end of your light. It might just be the beginning of your return. The cross isn't just wood. It's a symbol. It's a choice. Somewhere deep in your psyche, there is a cross. And on it, you've hung something, maybe without realizing, maybe thinking it was necessary. We grow up being told that certain things must die so we can truly live. But we rarely ask, what exactly am I killing? Is it really evil? Or is it a part of my truth that never had space to breathe? A lot of people think they're sacrificing ego, pride, or excess. But sometimes, what's being crucified is the desire to live fully, the impulse to say no, the courage to be real, the need to speak the truth, even with shaking hands. And instead of transformation, what happens is self-sabotage, because you start to believe you deserve to suffer. That pain makes you pure. That sacrifice is noble, even when it's killing something that was still alive. Carl Jung reminded us that archetypes are living images inside the soul, and the cross is one of them. It holds the tension of opposites, high and low, inner and outer, light and shadow. But when we distort that symbol, it becomes punishment. The cross stops being a passage and turns into a prison. And what should have been a moment of revelation becomes a cycle of repetition. You don't transform, you just keep getting hurt. The cross can also be the symbol of the self, the center of the psyche, where all parts come together. But for that to happen, the cross must stop being a stage for condemnation and become a space for integration. And that takes a kind of courage no one really teaches. The courage to ask what exactly you're crucifying inside yourself. Is it really your dark side? or just the side no one ever wanted to see. And if you feel like going a little deeper, I carefully prepared a gift for you. It may look small on the outside, but it goes deep. It was made for those quiet moments when you suddenly notice you're here, but not really present. You're breathing, but not really alive. Inside, you won't find answers or fixes, but you might find a way back. Back to the parts of you that got left behind. Back to the gentle voice you stopped listening to. Back to your true self. The one that still remembers who you are. Not a better version of yourself. Not a new version of yourself. Just a whole version of yourself. You'll find the link to your gift right there in the pinned comment. So, if your soul is tired of moving through life without really feeling it, if your soul is tired of waking up and not knowing why, click the link now. There's a difference between confronting the shadow and punishing yourself. Confronting it takes presence. Punishment doesn't. Punishment just repeats what you were once taught. That feeling is wrong, that wanting is shameful, that living is dangerous. But the soul can't stay silent for long. The repressed impulse doesn't die. It turns into anxiety, misplaced anger, sadness that won't leave. And it always comes back, asking to be heard. Maybe the cross doesn't have to be the place where you punish yourself anymore. Maybe it can become the place where you finally see, where you stop tearing yourself apart and start stitching yourself back together, where you understand that not every sacrifice is sacred. Some are just ways to keep hiding from who you really are. And sometimes, true rebirth begins when you decide to take down what was never meant to be nailed up there. You weren't born hating yourself. You weren't born doubting your feelings. You weren't born thinking there was something wrong with being who you are. All of that was learned, little by little, through the words that were said, and also the ones that weren't, through disapproving looks, heavy silences, and love that came with conditions. Early on, you learned that to be loved, you had to hide parts of yourself. And when you realized that showing everything led to rejection, you started hiding even from yourself. There comes a moment when a child understands, if I show this, I'll lose love. So they dim what they feel, shape themselves, fold in. A mask begins to form, a persona that smiles, pleases, survives. But behind that mask live the repressed traits, the swallowed impulses, the parts no one wanted to see. Over time, you stop remembering who placed that cross there. You just know it's there, and that a part of you is nailed to it every day. Those outside voices eventually turn into inner ones. You start correcting yourself before you even feel, judging yourself before you even try, criticizing yourself before you even understand what's happening. And that's how the inner executioner is born. The invisible judge holding the nails every time something alive tries to rise up inside you. He says, that's wrong, that's ugly, that will make you lose everything. But deep down, he's just repeating fear that was planted long ago. Carl Jung spoke of how we build an ego ideal, an image we try to become, but one that demands we reject anything that doesn't match it. And everything we reject becomes shadow. The shadow doesn't come from evil. It comes from exclusion. You were taught to be strong, so you hid your softness. You were taught to be good, so you buried your anger. You were told to stay light, so you hid the weight of your pain. It's not your fault, but now it's your responsibility. Because as long as those unconscious beliefs keep running the show, you'll keep crucifying the very parts that could save you. You'll keep thinking you have to kill something inside to stay alive, but you don't. You just need to understand who taught you that and why. And when you recognize those voices, they lose their power. And maybe, for the first time, you'll hear your own. Carl Jung called the shadow everything we are, but can't or won't recognize. It's not some distant, abstract idea. It's real. It shows up in your eyes when you pretend everything's fine. It's what explodes when you say you didn't mean to. It hides in your voice when you say, whatever. The shadow lives between the lines of your daily life. It's made of everything you had to swallow just to survive. Feelings, impulses, memories, truths, all pushed down into the personal unconscious because somehow they threatened your sense of belonging. But what gets pushed down doesn't die. It transforms, and it comes back. It returns as unconscious behavior, as reactions you don't understand, as words that slip out, as choices that sabotage what you want most. It shows up as symptoms your body screams, as a tiredness that never goes away, as anger in the wrong places. The shadow is always trying to show you that something inside you hasn't been seen. And the more you pretend it's not there, the more it moves beneath your awareness. The hardest part is that it doesn't show up as a monster. Most of the time, it shows up as a pattern, a relationship that repeats, a guilt that won't let go, a cycle of self-sabotage. It's the constant return of the same conflicts. The complexes formed when parts of you collide. These are your inner opposites, what you show and what you hide, what you accept and what you reject, what you say you want and what your unconscious is really chasing. That's why Jung said, the goal of life isn't perfection, it's integration, making what's in the dark conscious, facing what scares you with truth. Because the shadow isn't your end, it's the part of you left behind, waiting to be brought back in. And until it's heard, it stays crucified inside you. Like that symbolic devil you were taught to hate, but who only ever wanted to exist. Not to take over, but to make you whole. Making the unconscious conscious takes presence. It's a process, not a magic trick. But it all begins with one choice. Simple, and yet incredibly hard. To stop running. To stop escaping yourself. To stop pretending that the pain is just tiredness. And to ask, with courage, what part of me was nailed to the cross before I ever even listened? The shadow, deep down, is your soul saying, I'm you too. And when you finally listen, what once felt like a threat becomes a doorway. What felt like fear becomes a path. And what you thought was the worst part of you might be the part of your heart that's been waiting the longest. There's a kind of pain we don't want to let go of, a guilt that feels too old to forget, a weight that hurts, but also brings a strange sense of control, as if punishing yourself could somehow make up for something that was never made right. You wake up, live your life, go to work, take care of everything, but deep inside, you keep blaming yourself for everything, for feeling too much, for not being enough, for having failed. And deep down, you believe you deserve to carry this cross. This loyalty to pain isn't always conscious. Sometimes it's all that's left of a love that was never returned. Sometimes it's the echo of a childhood where you were only seen when you were hurting. Or maybe it's your way of staying good, punishing yourself before anyone else does. Carl Jung spoke often of complexes, inner pockets of pain that repeat themselves inside the psyche, and many of them begin here, with a repressed impulse that never got to be lived, and turned into punishment. The strangest part is, there's a kind of pleasure in it, not a joyful one, but a dark relief, as if feeling bad is the only way to feel at home, as if pain is more familiar than comfort. And so, without realizing, you sabotage yourself. You hide. You shrink. You keep feeding a negative self-image because you were taught that shining too brightly is dangerous. That feeling whole is arrogance. That being too happy is asking for trouble. These are unconscious beliefs shaping how you move through the world. You believe you only deserve love if you're hurting. That you have to bleed to prove you're good. That you must keep the devil on the cross because somehow he's you. And if he comes down, who will pay for all the things you still feel guilty for? But did you really do something that can't be forgiven? Or did you just learn to see yourself through the eyes of someone who never knew how to love you? Psychological repression doesn't erase what was judged as wrong. It just hides it. And what's hidden doesn't go away. It returns as behavior, as a pattern, as fear. And it repeats and repeats until you decide you no longer have to prove anything, not even to your own pain. You don't need to suffer to be good. You don't have to destroy yourself to be worthy of love. And maybe, just maybe, the bravest thing you can do is take down that part of you that's been punished long enough. Not to say it was right, but to say, enough. It has hurt enough. It has paid for what never should have been charged. And now it can finally rest. Some things can't be cast out because they're not visitors. They're part of the house. As painful or scary as it feels, the shadow isn't some outside enemy. It's a part of you that got locked away, and it screams, not to destroy you, but to be seen. The symbolic devil you nailed to the cross won't go away, because he's you. Not all of you, but a part that got left behind, and now wants to return. Carl Jung said, "We don't heal by splitting off what hurts, but by turning toward it." Shadow integration means we stop trying to defeat the dark part and start listening to it. It doesn't mean giving in to evil. It means realizing that not everything you've judged as evil truly is. Sometimes it's just old pain, a living impulse, a piece of instinct you had to shut down just to survive in the world. But the world isn't you, and hiding forever is exhausting. As long as you treat your shadow as an enemy, it will keep fighting to survive. It'll show up in your dreams, in reactions, in outbursts, in sadness, without a name. Because it doesn't want to destroy you, it wants to reconnect. The psyche longs for wholeness, not perfection. And there's no reconciliation of opposites until you stop dividing what you feel into what's allowed and what must die. Maybe nothing needs to die. Maybe it just needs to be translated, listened to, included. Shadow work isn't pretty. It's not clean. But it's deeply human. It's when you stand in front of the mirror and recognize what you tried to erase. It's when you look at what once scared you and do it with softness. It's when you stop demanding from yourself a purity that was never real. Because integration isn't about excuses. It's about understanding. It's saying, this is me too, and it doesn't need to control me from the dark anymore. The symbol of the self, for Jung, is the point where everything in you meets, where the opposites see each other and don't destroy each other. And maybe this is the moment you realize that the devil you crucified was really just an exiled instinct. He doesn't have to run wild, but he doesn't need to keep being punished either. What he needs is to be seen with honesty. You can't walk away from yourself, and no part of you disappears just because you want it to, but it can transform when it's finally seen. The devil won't leave because he's yours, but he can come down from the cross when you stop treating him like he belongs to another world. Sometimes what bothers you most in someone else isn't about them. It's about you, about a part of yourself you've hidden so well you don't even notice it anymore. But it shows up. It always shows up. And when it shows up in the face of someone who feels, speaks, or lives something you were taught to repress, the discomfort hits hard. The anger, the judgment, the harsh criticism. It's like that person committed some unforgivable sin. But deep down, they only mirrored a part of you that was condemned a long time ago. Carl Jung said the shadow doesn't disappear. It gets projected. If you don't acknowledge what you feel, you end up seeing it in others. That's when projection begins. You hang someone else on the cross that was meant for you. You crucify another person because you can't bear to look at what they remind you of. And this happens everywhere, in families, friendships, workplaces, on social media. It's like every gaze carries a mirror, and every mirror pulls you further away from yourself. Psychological projection is unconscious. It's not cruelty or intention. It's a reflex of the psyche, trying to deal with what was denied. And when there's no room to feel things inside, the feeling escapes onto someone else, and that someone becomes the enemy, the stranger, the wrong one. But what you're hating might just be a version of you that never got to exist in peace. This pattern can happen collectively too. We do it with groups, with ideas, with ways of living. The collective shadow is formed when an entire society decides that certain ways of being should be silenced, exiled, or punished. And the cross gets filled with people who are just trying to live in ways that broke away from what's acceptable. But what is acceptable, really? And who decided? When you become aware of these disowned parts of the self, you start to realize the conflict was never only with the other. It was an inner psychic conflict, projected outward because it became too unbearable inside. But instead of guilt, what this realization calls for is responsibility. The responsibility to take back what you've thrown onto someone else and integrate it. Making the unconscious conscious also means this: realizing where you've crucified someone because you didn't yet know how to care for yourself. It's not easy, but it's freeing, because when you stop demanding purity from the world, you begin to allow complexity in yourself. And when you stop judging with rage, you start to meet yourself with more truth. Maybe the other was never your enemy. Maybe they just turned on a light in a dark place inside your soul. Not every cross is visible. Sometimes it settles in the body, and it's heavy. A pain that won't go away, a tension that won't release, a tiredness no one understands. You run tests, change your routine, try to sleep better, but the body keeps speaking, because what you call a symptom might just be a part of your soul asking to be heard, a part that's been trapped for too long, and now it screams, not with words, but with pain. The shadow doesn't just express itself in the mind. It lives in the body too. When you repress an impulse, it doesn't disappear. It transforms. It becomes a tight chest, a lump in the throat, tension in the shoulders, weight on your back. It's unconscious expression looking for a way out. The psyche can't be ignored forever. And when it finds no exit through awareness, it turns to the body. Because the body doesn't lie. The body remembers. Carl Jung spoke about the Psyche-soma connection, the link between mind and body as a two-way street. What you feel, you also live in your body. And what you silence, the body tries to show. But we were taught to silence both. We were told that feeling too much makes you weak, that too much emotion makes you sick. But maybe what really makes us sick is the effort it takes to keep everything locked inside. It's not the feeling that harms us, it's the refusal to feel. Have you ever asked what your body is trying to tell you? What part of your story is it carrying all alone? Maybe it's the anger you swallowed for years. Maybe it's the tears that never came. Maybe it's the desire you were taught to fear. The personal shadow lives in your muscles, your bones, your organs. And when it has no space to exist with dignity, it becomes pain. Quiet pain, chronic pain, pain no one can explain. But that's saying everything. The repressed impulse doesn't vanish. It hardens. It finds whatever shape it can inside your body. And this isn't punishment. It's a cry for attention. Psychological repression takes a physical toll. And often, it's the body that carries the cross the mind built. The devil, in this symbolic image, isn't just in the soul anymore. He's in the inflamed nerve, in the shallow breath, in the constant migraine, in the tight stomach, in the insomnia that never leaves. Maybe your body is begging, take this pain down from the cross. Listen to me. Let me exist as a whole. Because it's not your enemy. It's the place where everything you never got to say still lives. And when you begin to listen, the body begins to ease. Because it doesn't want to trap you. It just wants to remind you. and bring you home whole. There comes a time when the soul gets tired of punishment, tired of repeating the same pain, the same guilt, the same fear, tired of hanging itself on a symbolic cross as if that were noble, fair, or necessary, tired of treating mistakes like eternal sentences. And that's when a hard choice appears. Keep punishing yourself, or start embracing yourself. Taking the devil down from the cross doesn't mean excusing what happened. It means recognizing that what you nailed there is human. And for that very reason, it needs to be seen with truth, not with violence. It's hard to accept that you also have a shadow, that you've felt what you shouldn't, that you've wanted what you weren't supposed to, that you've done what you're not proud of. But that doesn't make you a monster. It makes you human. And the pain you feel about it is what can save you. It shows that something alive in you is still trying to make peace. Shadow work isn't about erasing the past. It's about integrating. It's about letting the parts you exiled begin to come back home. Slowly, gently, however they can. Carl Jung spoke of the symbol of the self as the inner center where all opposites can meet, where light and shadow don't destroy each other, they complete each other. But for that to happen, you have to let go of one thing, the idealized image of who you thought you had to be. And that hurts, because that image was built with effort. It's how you learned to survive. But now, you're being called to truly live. The risk of becoming human is letting go of self-hatred. It's stepping down from the role of eternal guilty one. It's realizing that maybe what you feared most in yourself was just a forgotten part, a legitimate anger, a wounded desire, an unnamed instinct, something that never needed punishment, just listening. But to listen, you have to stop hitting, stop demanding purity, stop expecting perfection. And that's terrifying, because who will you be without the suffering that defined you for so long? That negative self-image forms when you confuse a mistake with your essence, when you believe that what you did in pain is who you are. But you are not your worst action. You are not your lowest version. You are a process, a being in motion. And if you can look at your psychological repression with compassion instead of fear, you might realize it's finally time to let go of the nails and breathe outside the cross. The reconciliation of opposites doesn't come with applause. It comes with silence, with humility, with tenderness. It's that moment when you say, I make mistakes too. I'm full of contradictions. I'm made of shadow too. But even so, I still deserve love. And maybe that's what scares you the most. Because loving yourself with clarity is the most revolutionary thing you can do. It's saying, I choose to see myself fully and stay. You've tried running from what scares you on the inside. You've tried to silence it, ignore it, rationalize it, distract yourself. You've prayed, escaped, blamed yourself. But there comes a moment, or maybe it's still coming, when there's nowhere left to run. A moment when the symbolic devil you nailed to the cross looks into your eyes. And at that point, there are no more arguments, no more excuses, just two eyes meeting, yours and the eyes of the part you've exiled. And what if he's not a monster? What if what you've always called evil is just old pain, a part of you stuck in time, a voice that wasn't heard, an impulse that got buried for fear of losing love? Maybe what you've been calling the devil is just a wounded version of your own heart, a version that stopped growing the day it was rejected. And now, all it does is scream, not for power, but for help. Carl Jung said that the true encounter with the personal shadow isn't violent, it's transformative. Because when you look into the eyes of what you've feared for so long, something breaks inside, not your strength, your rigidity. And in its place, listening is born. You start to ask, what has this part of me been trying to protect me from all this time? What does it know that I didn't want to hear? What does it want me to understand before it can finally rest? Integrating the shadow doesn't mean obeying repressed impulses. It means understanding what they're trying to tell you. Sometimes it's just a plea for respect, for freedom, for truth. Sometimes the impulse hides a trauma, a wound, a longing that never had a name. And now, the hidden self reveals itself, not to punish you, but to remind you that you're more whole than you thought, more contradictory, more complex, more alive. This encounter is symbolic, but it's also real. It can happen in a dream, in a breakdown, in an unexpected conversation. It can arrive through a silence that cuts through you, or in tears that come for no reason. It's when unconscious expression breaks through the mind's defenses and shows itself for what it is: human, honest, sensitive. And in that moment, the shadow stops being a threat and becomes a bridge between who you were and who you're ready to become. Making the unconscious conscious also means this: having the courage to look into the eyes of what you've tried so hard to hide. And instead of asking, "How do I get rid of this?" asking, "How can I hold this without losing myself?" Maybe that's the question that begins to heal. Because when the devil looks into your eyes, what he really wants is to be seen as a part, and not just as blame. True redemption isn't a miracle that comes from outside. It's a choice that begins within. It's the moment you decide to stop running, to stop hating yourself, to stop feeding the fire of punishment that no one else is keeping alive, only you. There's no light from heaven, no audience, just a deep silence and a question. What if I could forgive myself? Not as someone who forgets, but as someone who finally understands. Taking the devil down from the cross means this: looking at what you feared most in yourself and saying, "You can come back, not to take over, but to complete me, because everything that was exiled is still missed." And as long as part of you stays nailed there, no other part will ever fully rest. Symbolic redemption is when the soul stops being a battlefield and becomes a place of reunion, where opposites stop canceling each other out and start listening. Carl Jung said, "The path of healing is the process of individuation." When a person comes back to themselves, when they stop living in pieces, when they stop trying to fit into idealized images and begin to accept that wholeness includes both light and shadow. That pain is often just the reflection of what hasn't been included yet. That's why healing doesn't come as an answer. It comes as listening, as presence, as silence that holds what once came out screaming. You don't need to be fixed to deserve this crossing. You don't need to solve everything or understand everything. You just need to accept the invitation to return to your center, to stop abandoning yourself, to trust that something inside you, something deeper than the mistake, than the guilt, than the image, still remembers the way back home. Shadow integration is this: no longer dividing yourself, but learning to carry all of you, whole. Maybe that's the true symbol of the self, the moment when the cross dissolves and becomes ground, where punishment turns into compassion, where the devil you once hated takes on a human face, where pain stops being the enemy and becomes a guide, and where you finally realize you didn't come here to defeat your parts, but to walk with them. The reconciliation of opposites isn't an event, it's a living process. And emotional healing isn't the absence of pain, it's presence. Presence of soul, of listening, of courage. The crossing was never outward, it was always inward. And when you let yourself reach the end, you find out that this end is actually the beginning of who you've always been, whole. And if something I said reminded you of your own story or stirred something inside you, feel free to share it in the comments. I'd really love to hear it. What you have to say matters, not just to me, but maybe to someone else who's going through something similar. Sometimes, putting it into words is already part of the healing. If something inside you still wants to understand yourself, There's another video waiting for you on the screen. And maybe what's in there is exactly what you've been needing to hear. Click it, if that's where your soul is asking to go.